Swadee Kha. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wan Virang. I'm the CEO of TMA. Welcome to the first TMA Top Talk of this year. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have halted most of our activities, including this Top Talk event, until now. We also have to migrate to the online platform instead of the usual on-ground gathering, which we really miss so much and hope we can come back to meeting our top guests in person sometime soon. Candidate is the way it goes in this new normal situation. But anyway, we still stick to the same high quality content with top global speakers joining us, just like today, that we are highly honored by Her Excellency Dr. Iman Al Mutairi, the Assistant Minister at the Ministry of Commerce from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Iman is also the CEO of the National Competitiveness Center, which is tasked with reforming the kingdom's regulatory and policy environment for doing business and improving national competitiveness through working with the public and private partners, as well as implementing international best practices. It is such a huge task turning around the country, but Iman has done a really great job spearheading this reform to bring the kingdom up 12 notches in the IMD competitiveness ranking in just 4 years. We would love very much to hear from you, from her, how you, a scientist by training with a PhD in bioorganic chemistry, did that wonder. And for your information, Iman will be joined by Mr. Tewin Wongwanit, chairman of the subcommittee on national competitiveness enhancement, the National Economic and Social Development Board of Thailand, for a conversation in the latter part of today's talk. Well, I think it's about time that I turn this stage over to you, Iman, to begin your talk, please. Over to you, Iman.
Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting me. It's such a pleasure to be with you. Such a country that I absolutely love in the heart, and I have visited when I was 18 years old. So you bring back a lot of good memories. Thank you for hosting, and I hope I can add some flavor to your day and maybe add some knowledge to the people who are already working on competitiveness and maybe bring them others up to speed who are not familiar with the topic. So please allow me to talk today about our experience in Saudi Arabia and reforming the business environment. And I think it is such a huge task if you were to do it alone. But if you have everybody gathered around you from the public sector and from the private sector and the NGOs, the job becomes much, much easier. So today I'm going to walk you through our experience. I'll try to do it in about 20 to 30 minutes maximum, so I allow more time for questions and answers, because we'd like this to be more of a workshop, a chat session, rather than just to be a one-side information boosting. So I'll start with my topics for the day. So I'll talk a little bit about the National Competitiveness Center in Saudi Arabia's vision, how we started, where we're at today, how did we get to where we are, the model that we use to enhance our competitiveness. And it's a model that I actually started sharing with a lot of organizations, because I think if you have a good virus, spread it. And I think we have created a good virus, and we're trying to share our knowledge and experience with other countries. I'll talk about how we've done in our international indicators and how we brought value to through the reforms that we had to the kingdom. I'll also talk about elevating the kingdom's competitiveness through launching some e-services and platforms to talk to our investors and everyone else around us, whether they're in the government or the private sector or NGOs, as I mentioned. And what are we going to do in our future agenda? This is an ongoing process. It does not stop when you achieve or make big achievements. But actually, if you don't sustain it and if you don't have a very good sustainable model, you can easily go back to where you started, if not worse. So the National Competitiveness Center of Saudi Arabia has a nickname called Taysir. And Taysir is an Arabic word which means making things simpler, making things seamless, making them easier. So what we aim for in the center and its ExCom committee is to make things easier for the private sector, to encourage them to make more investments in Saudi Arabia. So our vision was 2030, we want the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, one of the world's 10 most competitive economies, driven by its focus on investment, entrepreneurship, innovation, and very important word that a lot of countries actually is ignoring is productivity. Productivity in how you've actually developed your talent to be able to use technology for the country to be more productive. How are we doing this? How we can achieve this vision is by aligning government entities around one unified vision of competitiveness. And that's, I think, was the hardest thing to do, aligning everybody on one vision, making sure that all the government entities and the private sector are key players into competitiveness of any country, because it will do well for the country, it will do well for the private sector, and automatically will grow the economy. We wanted to unleash the power of investments, our entrepreneurships, and business creation through friendlier policies, regulations, and procedures. Very important to start with policies and regulations, because that's how you can achieve sustainability for a very long period of time. And then procedures follow, and what I mean by procedures is making them shorter, making them easier to do, and automating as much as you can. Our model in Saudi Arabia, we want, as I said, to institutionalize the work of government efforts in general to enhance competitiveness. And the center of the National Competitive Center was the center that was leading these efforts. The government entities will always need an orchestrator. They need somebody who organizes their efforts under one target, one umbrella. It's very hard to go all over the place with all your reforms and the efforts, and then you will end up doing nothing, because everyone will do something different. You can actually contradict each other's efforts. And therefore, we believe that it is very, very important that we have targets. We have certain reforms that we set in the beginning of the year, and all government entities and the private sector work towards that target. And I think that made us very successful in our model. So what we do is we don't look at very big, fluffy agendas, because that will take you nowhere. And I've seen a lot of countries actually making very big promises on under-delivering. And what you need to do, and I think part of our success, is we've identified certain even articles and certain laws that we said, okay, this is actually an article that is a bottleneck in one of these laws. And if we were to remove that, I think we can achieve more investment in Saudi Arabia and enhance our competitiveness. So what we've done is we've looked at a number of laws and policies in the kingdom that relates to trade or investments. And we said, okay, this is actually not a best practice. It could be a bottleneck. It could be very, very old law that we need to change. So we go after specific articles of laws and bylaws, and we try to set an agenda for every year to change certain numbers of them, go after them, public consult with the private sector, and change those laws. And I think one of our secrets too, on top of just being focused on what we need to do, is the very accelerated transformation that we go through. We do things very fast. We don't sleep on something. Everything has to be done yesterday, but it has to be also done with quality. Very important. So that's number one. Number two, we support government entities and private sector to implement those reforms. It's very easy to say for the government entity, you have this problem, you go and fix it. What we try to achieve is we identify the issue or the challenge and say we will fix it with you. So we work hand in hand with them to support them, to help them with consultancy, to drive the change within the government all across the entities, because there might be one law in one entity, but it actually has an impact on maybe 4 or 5 different entities. So who can do this coordination work? It is actually the job of the NCC to work with all on the same table to make sure that they actually achieve the government's agenda on competitiveness. Number 3, we track and we analyze performance on global indicators. So we have one whole unit, and I'll show you our organization structure. We have one unit that is called analytics unit. So what that does is actually, it's the spark of all the reforms. So it takes all the important international indicators that we have selected to go after year, and they will identify where we have gaps. And so we decide, for example, on our reform agenda every year to say, okay, these are the gaps that we find in the international indicators for competitiveness, like, for example, the WEF, the IMD, the doing business, and so on. And we say, okay, other countries have actually achieved better competitiveness and they achieved more FDI into their country by actually tweaking some of these or deregulating some of these sectors and so on. So that's one thing that we also do. And then we put initiatives for each one of these gaps. And we say, okay, this initiative is going to make this reform happen. And if this reform happens, we will do well in this indicator. And if we do well in this indicator, hopefully, automatically, slowly, the investments will start coming. However, it's not always the case. When you change an indicator and you jump in your ranking, that you would expect immediately that you're going to have investments coming to Saudi Arabia. But sometimes it happens. Sometimes it takes just more than that. But we may be lucky because we are in a different situation. We are a hub. Our location is perfect. We are in between 3 continents. So we have no excuse not to attract investment if we were just to deregulate, ease of the regulations and more competitive in terms of fees, and then only the investments will come. So that's one thing that we do. But again, we don't only count on what the indicators tell us that we have gaps in, but we always remember we always have the private sector next to us. And that's the most important thing for any government if they want to succeed. They must work hand in hand with the private sector. The private sector will start, the local private sector will start investing. The foreign private sector will see that the local private sector is investing, and they will automatically also come and join because they will trust the environment that your investors are investing in, and you will see slowly FDI flying into the country as well. Number 4 is we raise awareness about how important it is to be competitive for our nation in general. So it's competitive is not only in the business environment, it's economic, it's social, it's cultural. So it actually works across all sectors of a country. So we educate all sectors, we educate the nation, we educate socially of how important it is to be inclusive in the economy, how important it is to raise competitiveness at all levels. And number 5, and finally, is we carry out a lot of research by data. Data is extremely important, but sometimes you can actually immerse yourself in data that is not useful. It is important to understand which data you want to collect, what data will drive your decision-making towards better economic growth. So how do we achieve all of this? This is how we look like. So we report, and it's very important for such an entity to have the power and to be independent. So we don't want to belong to any ministry, because then you immediately will have a conflict of interest. So because maybe one ministry will enforce something that is not right just for the sake of that ministry to have an impact or to have more power on other ministries. So it is absolutely wrong to actually belong under one of these ministries. It is very important that this body, competitiveness body, will have its own independence. And therefore, we report to the Council of Economic and Development Affairs, which is headed by His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And so that immediately gives us the teeth and the power to make the change that we need to do. So that makes us the machine that actually put together all the reforms, and then we escalate any decision-making that is actually an obstacle to this CEDA Council, and we get approvals 99.9% of the time. But how does that machine look like internally? On a daily basis, what do we do? So in gray, we have all these departments that actually sits and under the National Competitiveness Center, and I put a slash on the side called Taysir, because Taysir started before the National Competitiveness Center, and Taysir was just a committee. It was a committee headed by His Excellency, the Minister of Commerce. He had a fire in the belly. He had a thought that, okay, maybe I will work on some reforms to ease the business environment, and I need few of the government entities with me. So he worked initially with his own ministry, but also worked with the municipality, worked a little bit with the Ministry of Finance, so on. But slowly he decided, well, no, actually we need all the government entities, because the process is actually when an investor wants to invest, they will have to pass by one way or the other at some point of their life cycle through one of these ministries. And these ministries are the sectors of business in general in any country. So slowly we started adding within that small committee more government entities, and government entities started working together. They were very excited that they were doing a great job, and then all of a sudden they were doing a lot of reforms. Asked the private sector, is this useful? They said, no, it's not useful. So we went back to maybe square, not one, maybe two or three, to say, okay, we have the means to do that. We have the will and we have the power. However, we need this, an internal consultant that we're doing all this work for. We're doing all this work for the private sector. However, we don't have the private sector sitting with us on the same table. Then that's an issue. That's a problem. So very, very quickly, we've identified this issue, and then we've invited the Council of Chambers to be part of this committee called Taysir initially. And as I said, it was not an organization, it was not a body, it was just a committee with some public sector and no private sector. And then it became public sector and private sector. Now we create the balance element that we should add is somebody who could guide us through this agenda. What is the rest of the world doing? How does the world look at us internally? And so I'll talk to you in the next slide about our other partners. So the box underneath the gray units is all the government entities who actually then became small task forces and then committees, and then those committees were then chaired by government entity bodies. So say, for example, the Protecting Minority Investors, it was actually chaired by a member from the Ministry of Commerce, but then he will create also other members within the committee who actually represent other government entities and the private sector. So in each of these 23 subcommittees, we have the government sector and the private sector, and sometimes NGOs if we need them. And then the units on top is now the departments within the NCC that was just created in 2019. So the whole organization of the National Competitiveness Center actually started on January 2019. Before that, we started with a committee in 2016 up to 2019, just a committee that was growing. And then we said, no, we need to institutionalize this work. We need to make it an official government body that reports to the highest authority in the kingdom. And that's how the National Competitiveness Center was created. But when it was created, we already had Taysir, the committee, it's like the ExCom committee. We also had 10 subcommittees. And if you look at them, and if you know the doing business reports of the World Bank, you'll recognize that these 10 committees actually represent the 10 indicators of the World Bank. I'll tell you a story for that. So we said, okay, we need to start somewhere. We need to know where we're going. We don't know what the reform agenda looks like. Where do we want to score well? Who's going to guide us through this? So then we called the World Bank. We partnered with the World Bank to say, if we were to hit those 10 indicators, we would have done already a lot of reforms that is going to impact the small and medium enterprises within the local private sector. And that's a very good jump start for our economy. So we started with those. Slowly, the idea became more mature. We actually recognized that the mechanism of how we're actually working on these committees was very useful. It was very fruitful. And then we decided to put more bundles, and each bundle is represented by a committee. And why did we choose those bundles? Well, it will all depend on the challenges that we have on the ground. So if we have challenges on the government procurement, we created the government procurement subcommittee. We put the head of that committee, Ministry of Finance. We put all the other entities that are related to the topic and the challenges within that committee. And again, the private sector was sitting there, and so on and so forth. So we created a huge machine. We're only 40 people in the National Competitiveness Center, but we have 300 people working with us within the subcommittees, just directly within the subcommittees. And slowly we've worked out all these subcommittees are working with all these ministries. And so little by little now we have all the government entities working towards one competitiveness agenda for the country. And I think that was our success in creating that model. So I mentioned that we needed somebody to guide us through these changes, to be our support, to be our mirror, to tell us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. We don't want a profitable organization or consultant to just clap whenever we've done something, even if we're not doing something wrong. So we decided to go and partner with our international organizations who have an agenda or have some sort of an indicator or have a reform knowledge. And those were the World Bank, and they were our closest partner initially. We worked very closely with them, and we've learned a lot, to be honest. And then we've also partnered with IMD 3 years ago, and then the World Economic Forum, and then the UN, and we have also a contract with the Untitled to review all our policies and our laws for trade and investment and what's happening. So that is our sounding board, you know, if you may. These are our board of experts that we always go back to, and we have a very close partnership and relationship with them. They're part of our family. We learn from them, and they also learn from us if we have something successful that we share. The government entities, as I said, they're our extended arm of the NCC. And of course, the private sector, whether they're entrepreneurs, they're foreign companies, small and medium enterprises, the Council of Chambers, or the local companies and the foreign companies. So we've got now the mix, and I've actually, we could just say private sector and walk away, but you really have to have the mix of the private sector. You want to start with the entrepreneurs because you want to work on the accelerator, the incubators, and what have you. You also want to work with the big companies. You want to work with the local companies because they have different issues than the foreign companies. So they need to know that there is a big brother for them somewhere, and we are the voice of the private sector. We are not the voice of the government, by the way. The government entities don't like us very much, but they're working with us. But now we have also worked with them so closely. Whatever achievements that happens on the ground, we never take the credit. We actually walk away totally. We give the credit to the government entity, and that's how we engage them more and more. So now they're proud of what they're doing. Now they're bringing more reforms initiatives to the table, more than we do. And we've opened channels also between them and the private sector, because they're sitting with them on all these councils and all these committees. So slowly the relationship became more transparent. The private sector can talk to the public sector without fearing that they are not going to like them or not going to issue license for them. So we've actually killed a lot of birds with one stone, which actually worked very well. So methodology of different entities and how we deal with them. We do a lot of face-to-face meetings. Now we do a lot of virtual meetings. We have a lot of workshops. We hear, we listen to what the private sector tells us, and we try to engage as much as possible with them. So we have continuous collaboration with the chambers. Only just, since we've started the NCC, we have that many meetings with the private sector and the Council of Chambers. With the global organizations, we have more than 250 workshops since we started with them. We go and visit them, they come and visit us. We have an agenda ongoing throughout the year where they come and visit, and we learn from them and they learn from us. We also have launched the private sector feedback platform. So we have a platform that's any private sector with a business. They can actually go in and they can tell us not about their personal issue within their company, but an issue that is actually across the sector. So it's a trend across the sector that actually affects the sector and the business and the expansion and growth of that sector. So they write their issue, and they always have to write a recommendation. It's easy to throw a problem at me, but you have to tell me what is your solution towards that problem so I can consider it, because maybe I'll throw a solution that you wouldn't like. So that platform, we get a lot of feedback, and it's very dynamic. So whenever they log in their concern, they will get a message from somebody because we have a call center with almost 12 people in there. They respond immediately to say, okay, tell me more about your issue, or okay, we've taken it to this entity and they're working on it, and they will always give them that feedback. So this feedback loop is very important. Otherwise, don't open feedback platforms, because they can actually backfire on you if you don't respond very quickly. I talked to you about the initial committee that we've created, and the committee actually religiously meets every Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Religiously meets. They will never cancel their meeting. And in that committee, it's like an ExCom for the National Competitiveness Center. It's not the board, okay? The board meets every quarter. But it is actually the committee that meets with all the private sector sitting on the same table, and the public sector sitting on the table, and the private sector. And we have an agenda every week. The agenda actually is usually what goes to the agenda is all the issues and the challenges that we do not get resolved on the subcommittee levels, and we need to escalate. So we escalate to this ExCom, which has all the 23 chairmen of all the 23 committees, plus other deputies from all the public sector, and we have almost 50 government entities sit with us on that same table. And these meetings are conducted on weekly basis, and other meetings within the small committees also meet on weekly basis. So we have ongoing on our agenda lots of reforms. So we close some and then we enter a few more. So whenever we close reforms, we have to inject more, a new generation, we call them, of reforms. And there are selections. Some reforms will actually close some gaps in the international indicators. Other reforms will close actual gaps from the private sector they come up with. But in general, in any competitiveness agenda, you should always focus on the pockets on the top. So you'll have government service efficiency reforms, licensing reforms, business environment laws and regulations, legislative framework reforms, labor and skill and talent has to be definitely one pocket that you have to look at when you consider your reforms. Access to finance is also very important. Technology and innovation, transparency and accountability, healthcare and education. And why did we distribute them to these 8 pockets? Because we have found that these are actually the pillars, if I may, the pillars of competitiveness. If you look at any of the international indicators for competitiveness, you will find that they will touch on 1 or 2 or 3 of these pillars. So we decided these are the pillars that we are always going to consider working out reforms to actually achieve our targets. So year by year, if you see, for example, in 2016, we've started with a number of initiatives, and we keep on growing them every year. So some will be closed, some will be ongoing. It doesn't mean that the ones on blue, or ones in green who are in progress, that we have not closed them. No, some of them are closed already, and we enter new reforms as we go. So what are these reforms actually that we have achieved so far? So we distribute our reforms into laws and regulations and processes and procedures, and then automation, because as I said, automation will make you more productive, but whatever you can automate, immediately take it to automation as much and fast as you can. So if we take for example, this is just a flavor of some of the reforms that we have done in the past 3 years. So when you talk about enabling laws and regulations, what exactly have we done? So we created the investment policies, and now the law is in its way to be actually produced. And what it is basically we said there is no more investment law for foreign investors and investment law for local investors, which we have today. We've combined the two together. We've worked with our partner, the World Bank, to actually draft this law. And so it's going to be one law that serves both. So equity in the investment law is very important. We've moved a lot of our ownership of some of the businesses in some sectors to 100% foreign ownership, while in the past, you always have to have a Saudi partner when you open some of your businesses in some sectors. Now we have unleashed the retail sector, the education sector, the health and the media sector, and we're adding one sector as we go, so to allow foreign investors to come and invest in Saudi Arabia on their own without having a Saudi partner. We've also introduced the bankruptcy law last year and its bylaws, the commercial pledge law. We established also compensation law for public notary errors, so you will get compensated if you have a notary error. We issued the commercial courts law this year, the law for protecting minority investors. We're the 3rd globally ranked on the protecting minority investors on the doing business report. We also have new bylaws for Saudi building code and so on. So the arbitration center added a lot. So this is basically the market dynamics that you have to always focus on. Make sure that you have Investors trust where they're coming to invest. They know that there will be a law to protect them. They know where to look for that law, and they know how to use that law. It is very, very important. So let's say this is the first section. And of course, we've got a long list of them, but I just didn't want to bore you with all of these. If we look at the next section, it's automation and elimination of red tape. So a lot of the procedures and processes, you can actually make them shorter, and you can make them shorter by automation, which actually works very well. So first you work on the law, and then you make sure that you implement the law. And when you implement the law, you implement it with the least number of steps and fees as well. So one of our biggest achievements in the past 3 years was the clearance of containers in Saudi Arabia's ports now takes 24 hours, when it used to take 2 weeks and 3 weeks. Now it's actually 24 hours, and we're trying to even reduce it to 7 hours in some cases. Reducing the investment licensing requirements. We have around 3,000 activities that needed to be licensed. We've actually knocked down half of these licensing requirements. A lot of our licenses now are instant license. So when you actually create your CR, you will immediately get licensed on around 700 license activities right now. And we're growing this. And our rule of thumb is deregulate. So everything should be an instant license unless it is very high risk. So that's our policy right now. And this is an effort that is ongoing. So we've knocked down 54% of the requirements, but we're continuing to do more every day. We've reduced, for example, the list of restrictions for chemical materials by 73%, which was a huge jump. Now you can transfer property online and within 1 hour. We've launched the one-stop shop for issuing a CR in 1 hour. Now we're working on our sister organization, which I'm also heading right now. It's called the Saudi Business Center. So it's a mega one-stop shop, not only for issuing your CR, but it will be with a one-stop shop for issuing all your licenses from all the government entities in one place without having to visit any of the government entities. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is a list of all the things that we have done in terms of removing red tape and automation. One very big important thing, and I think this is maybe one of our flagship now programs, because the whole world was accusing Saudi Arabia of not giving women their the power and their rights and all of that. And I think if there is one thing that we need to brag about in Saudi Arabia is how we made that shift for women's empowerment in the kingdom in such a very short period of time. So, and since 2015, things have been happening very quickly. You might all know that 2 years ago, females started driving, and the whole world thought it was going to be chaotic. You know, it was going to be chaos. You know, there will be a lot of harassment. There will be this and that and the other. Women don't know how to drive. Well, you know, half of the females in Saudi Arabia already have driving license because they already gained them from other countries. So when they immediately opened the chance for women to get their license, you know, half of the ladies were already driving, and there were 0 incidents. We were so proud of our community and our people, our citizens, that we actually did not have any incidents. Everybody was very welcoming to the women's driving, and that was the beginning of many sparks that actually changed the face of empowering women in Saudi Arabia and the participation of the economy. And we, you know, women were always in the business, whether they're owners of business or working in different government and public and private sector. But one thing that I just wanted to touch on, last year, the World Bank introduced the Women, Business and the Law report, which is one of the now very important flagship reports of the World Bank. Saudi Arabia 2 years ago, in that report, was at the bottom of the list among 189 countries. We were at the bottom. We were the worst in the world, okay, for what the report was considering. In 1 year, Saudi Arabia moved from 25 out of 100 scores, 25. You know, we were even worse than Iran and Afghanistan in that report. In 1 year, we moved ourselves from 25 to 70.6 out of 100 in that report. We're very proud, and we became the #1 reformer in the world. and the #1 improver in the world when it comes to women empowerment in the Women Business and the Law report. So we removed all the barriers to women's mobility. Ladies were taking permission from their guardianship to actually travel outside Saudi Arabia. And then we removed that law. We've changed it actually in less than 2 months. Of course, there was already anti-discrimination, anti-harassment law. Women can get credit just like men. They have access to credit, equal opportunity in employment for all jobs. And working at night was an issue. We removed that restriction as well. Dismissal during the pregnancy, also that law was corrected. No one can actually fire a female when she's pregnant. The pension credit during periods of childhood was also corrected in the law. Equal retirement age between both genders. Well, women were getting retirement at the age of 57, but then we corrected it. Now both men and women, they get it at the age of 60. All professional careers are open for women just like men. So what we've done is we looked at across all the laws that has any discrimination between men and women, and we removed them. So we made everything equal. So that's a very big achievement for Saudi Arabia that we have done. Again, for the other procedures and processes in the business environment, we're issuing licenses now for commercial entities to operate 24 hours. All commercial entities used to actually have restrictions. Now, a lot of entities like the restaurants, for example, were allowed to open it for 24 hours and so on. So one-stop shop, we unified for all government entities. So I'm not going to go through this to bore you, but these are some of the procedures that we have changed. Now, what are the reports that actually helped us reform better, and what can we do more across all the government entities? So the National Competitiveness Center decided that there are 5 reports. If you actually capture them with all their sub-indicators, it will touch on reforms here and there related to the pillars that I talked to you about. And these are the Doing Business report, the Human Capital Index report, the IMD report, the WEF report, and the Women Business and the Law report. So these 5 reports, we decided that us in the National Competitiveness Center as a team, we are going to monitor them. We are going to put initiatives to make more reforms happen on the ground. Now, as I said, competitiveness is not only in the business environment, it's across everything. It's cultural, it's social, it's everywhere. So the agenda of the 2030 vision of Saudi Arabia has a lot of targets and has a lot of reforms. How can we help them get to their targets even faster and better? We've identified 27 other indicators as / reports for the different entities in the government. And we said, okay, for example, the Ministry of Communication and IT, we gave them 1 or 2 different indicators. We say, go and study those indicators. Tell us where we're not doing very well in Saudi Arabia. What are our gaps? And tell us what's your agenda to close those gaps with certain initiatives that you're going to come and report to the National Competitiveness Center with its committee. And if we see that there is an alarm somewhere, we are going to raise red flags and we're going to escalate to the highest authority in the kingdom. And we did that with other entities like the tourism the ministry. We did it with the transportation ministry. So each 1 or 2 reports belongs now to 1 or 2 of the ministers. So now we have around 19 ministries who are responsible for the 27 indicators of competitiveness in general. So what have we done by this exercise? We immediately made the whole country talk about competitiveness. So we want them to compete. We want them to understand what it is to be in competition. So now, automatically, they're looking at other countries. What are the best practices in other countries who actually made them reach where they are? And let's go and run after it. Some of the international benchmarks are useful for a country. Sometimes you have to create your own because each environment is different. And that's what we encourage them to do all the time. And what we've done is we actually took, for example, the top 5 reports, and we said, okay, here's where we are today. Here's where we want to be in a few years from today. And how do we get there? So you can see, for example, in the Doing Business report, in 2015, we were at 49, and then we started the nosedive, dropping, until we reached where we are. There's a 2018, there's a typo, sorry. 2018 and 19, we were always 92. And then all of a sudden we jumped to 62, 30 places up only in 1 year. And that's because of the reforms that I talked to you about. And so on with the rest of the reports, like the WEF report, for example. We see our progress, we know where we're at, and then we move on to correcting all of our indicators by introducing more reforms. And now we have actually our targets agenda for 5 years from today. So we know in 5 years where we want to be, and we try our best to work out our way up. And so these are all the indicators that we're following. I just want to take you through the feedback platform that I talked to you about. It's a private sector feedback platform where we capture, identify challenges facing the private sector. We analyze those challenges, we do a lot of benchmark, we apply best practice, and then we put reforms to improve them. We monitor all the time and validate. We have one whole entity that looks at mystery shopping. So we do mystery shopping all the time. So if we say, or one entity said, we already have applied this reform and it's working, we trust and confirm. We go back and we say, okay, let's see what the private sector says. So we go back to the private sector, we ask them, but we also go to all the websites for this government entity to check that the procedure is correct. We do our own mystery shopping ourselves, and we have also one team that is only doing those calls, and they visit the public sector to make sure that the reform actually happens. We're also responsible in the National Competitiveness Center for streamlining all the policy making. So what we do is we have an entity, a new entity that has been just landed on us, where we do public consultation. So no one is allowed to issue any law without coming to us to do public consultation for 1 month. We hear from the private sector. If the private sector says that this law suits them or it actually contradicts with their interest, then we are mandated to work with this government entity to change those articles of those laws and then embed the new changes based on what we hear from the private sector. So that's what we're doing with this. Where are we today and where we want to be? Well, we're always reforming. We'll always bring together new initiatives to reform more on all sectors, not only in one. And we try to look at competitiveness as a 360. So we're always ongoingly making the change and trying to improve as we speak. I will stop here, and I would love to hear your feedback, your comments, your questions, and I'm free for you to talk for the next, I guess, 25 minutes. And I'll be happy to answer any question. Please be transparent. I'm very transparent. I have nothing to hide. You can ask any question that you want. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Iman. It seems like a lot of work that I really can't imagine, how your 40 people team have orchestrated this, such a huge mission. I really have to congratulate you again on this, wonderful, job, and that is very well done. May I now invite Kun Tewin in, please? Kun Tewin, ka?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You can hear me.
Yes. Good afternoon, your time, Dr. Iman. Such a pleasure to be able to hear what you have to share with us on how Saudi Arabia reformed the business environment to boost the national competitiveness. And I sense from your 35-40 minutes or so speech of the passion in you and the pride in achieving the achievement that you have done for the country. So congratulations on that, and thank you very much for sharing with us. And I think you are the living proof of how Saudi Arabia empower women with the talent. I have few sets of questions, and I understand that there may be additional questions from the audience as well. So maybe I'll allow some time for Kun Nampung to gather the information first by asking some of the questions I had. It seems like the competitiveness is one of the top priority of the government and of the country leaders, and the setup of the NCC also proves that that is one of the top agenda. And you have achieved the improvement. We are more familiar with the IMD ranking, and I think you have improved the ranking. I think 12 level, 12 ranks within the last 3-4 years. So that's quite an achievement. Do you set any aspiration for the next 5 years or so on where you want to be? And if so, can you share with us a little bit on how to achieve that?
Thank you for your question. Yes, we always have targets. You cannot work with a vision and target. And as I mentioned, we want to be number one, in the world and all the indicators, not only in IMD or the World Bank, but we have said in general in our competitiveness agenda that we want to be the top 10, one of the top 10 economies by 2030. So that by itself is a very big stretch. And everybody was laughing at us, okay? Really, everybody was laughing at us because since 2010, honestly, we were a nosedive in all the competitiveness indicators. And why is that? Because there was no owner of competitiveness in Saudi Arabia. We were not taking it seriously, because believe it or not, in the World Bank report, 2010, Saudi Arabia was ranked number 10. Okay, and then we went down from number 10 to 92 out of 190 countries. You know how that felt? It felt absolutely miserable, but because no one was actually looking at us. You need somebody that is actually a leader to say, this is important, as you said, this is important, and we have a target and we're going to go after it. With the new vision of Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince being a young gentleman who actually was trying to make all the changes happen all at once, he has put the competitiveness in the heart of its vision. So number one, you have to have a strategy of the country. Say, okay, the country is looking at this, it is important, are we going to put it at the heart of the strategy of the country? It wasn't in any strategy of Saudi Arabia to be any number in any of the competitiveness reports. So that's very important. And then, as you just mentioned, actually, you've said it in a very short message, but you've said everything. So you have to be serious about it. Number two, you have to show that you're serious about it. And how do you show that? By sustainability. And how you make sustainability is you make something, institutionalize it. So institutionalizing is having a body that is there to stay. It's not a committee that is going to go away. The committee was achieving what it was supposed to achieve, but we know a committee should only last for a certain period of time and then it goes away. So you have to have an organization that has a mandate, and it's in its mandate, it will tell you that I want you to be at that target, at that level by that year. It's very important. And then you have to have the authority. You have to have authority in terms of not only authority, me working under this umbrella with my team, I can actually do whatever I'm doing day and night until I'm blue in the face and no one is going to look at it. Not unless you have the belief from the leadership of the country to say this is something important and we'll all support it, then you will get nowhere. And honestly speaking, I can tell you that I have an excellent leader who is my personal boss, my direct boss. He's the Minister of Commerce. He has a fire in the belly. You have to have a fire in the belly. You really have to have a fire. The combination of, a team that is working, doing all the mechanics and the dynamics for you and telling you what reforms you need to do to get there. So these are your subject matter experts in competitiveness. And that's my team who's working with me here. And I'll actually, if you don't mind, in a little while, I'm going to turn my camera to my team so you can look at them and see how we're working, because I'm working in the office. And I think that will be exciting. I'll walk you through in a little while. If you don't mind, is it okay to do that?
Yes, I would love to see them.
Okay, so we believe like we're a think tank. So a team that is working very hard, a boss that actually will implement. So he will get us, if we were stuck somewhere, he will go and pick up the phone or go and visit one of the other ministers who we want something done from them, and he'll get it resolved at the same minute. He won't wait. This is the way he is. Okay. And then if we actually hit a wall with 3 or 4 ministers who are not willing to do the change because of one reason, not because they don't want to do it, it's because there are other, links with other government entities, then we escalate to the Crown Prince. And normally, I'm telling you 99.9% of the time, it gets resolved. So I think that's the recipe of how you want to do it. So have a good agenda, have a vision, a strategy, a good agenda for reform, get engagement of all the stakeholders, get somebody who can actually have authority and fire and ability to run after something, and a government that is willing to do the change. And I'm going to turn a little bit, I'll
Okay.
see if I can actually turn around my camera just to show you my team, because I'm very proud of them. Let's see. You see here, this is our think tank. Can you see them?
In the background, I can see
In
the
the background.
office. Yes.
So here are the people. Say hello, people. All of you. Hello. So this is my working team here.
Not very many people.
Well, this is one side. I'll go to
Yes.
the other side, but I'll try to make it as live as possible for you, because that's more exciting than just me talking. So here's another part of the team. Or say hello. Can you see them?
Hi, yeah.
Yes. Hello. They're keeping a little bit distance from you, yes?
Here.
Physically.
Say hello. No, actually, I'm sitting
okay.
in the middle of all of them. Yeah. So,
Oh,
okay.
I see. Okay.
And one more thing that is very important. Let me just tell you how my office is. I have this office that is a small office. It's actually a very small office, and I don't have any walls. I actually have glass walls.
Open space.
So I see them, they see me, open space, because I think one very important element also of doing this work is to get your people engaged, be part of the team, and you learn from them, they learn from you, and this is how you actually achieve something. Sorry, I just took you into a tour, but I just wanted to make it more live for you.
Thank you. I think you just display one of the key area of reform, which is transparency and accountability. Very good. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Actually, you've answered some of the question I've planned earlier. But another one that I was wondering is you said you're working with some of the foreign experts. You use the report from World Bank and IMD, WEF, and a few other reports. How do you work with them? What is the nature of cooperation with these international institutions? What do they do? Do they advise you? Do they come in and give you some assessment?
Okay, so they always say that a consultant is as good as its client. So it's up to you how you want to utilize those expertise. They're experts, okay? They're experts. They know, they go around the world. They cover 190 countries. They will add a lot of value for you only if you let them add this value for you. So what I try to do as much as possible is, with the World Bank, for example, I have a partnership with them. And the partnership is not only a country with a country partnership, but I have a partnership with the NCC. They work with us to help us achieve our reforms. And in return, I tell them that, I'll be your guinea pig. So try any new agenda of reforms that you want to try in one country. Saudi Arabia will do it. We have the center. It actually works very, very well for them. So they come and visit on nearly monthly basis. People from either Vienna or from Washington, they will come and visit on a monthly basis. We will have a list of items reforms that we are trying to implement, whether they are in the laws or the procedures, in everything, in all sectors. So they will sit with us and they will bring the subject matter experts from their side. They will help us navigate through some of these reforms, and they will tell us, change this, it'll be better, change that, change even the drafting of your law to make it sound like this. This is what this country has done and they succeeded, and so on. So they will come and visit, we will go and visit them. And they build the capacity in the NCC. So I send a lot of my people as well there to spend some time with them and to learn from it. With the IMD, I'm creating similar partnerships, so where they can actually do studies with us and they can guide us through some of the competitiveness agenda. And they will, I've just asked actually the management to actually perform some reforms here in Saudi Arabia, and let's trial them in a different way. And so it depends on the organization, but we do a lot of collaborations, and the collaborations are not by emails or by phone. Nothing beats honestly a face-to-face and a visit.
That's a question from the audience. It is one of the key challenges or bottlenecks to increase competitiveness in Thailand is about the NGO. Would you have any advice on how to bring along the interest?
I'm very sorry because the sun is in my eyes. NGOs also actually are represented with one of the committees in the NCC, and they partner with us on a lot of activities. Let me give you an example. For example, with the women business and the law. There are lots of women foundations. So we've gathered all of them to tell us again what is it that they need us to do as a government and how we can help them. And they've drafted that agenda for women empowerment, and we're working with them on continuous basis to improve that. So that's something that we're doing with the NGO. And it actually applies for education, for example. This is very important. They are your third party. They're the ones who are either going to tell you this is going to work well or this is going to work bad, or also they will come and do the assessment for you and to tell you what people really think, because they're a non-profit organization. They will tell it to you as it is. They have no personal interest in making things better or worse. They want things to be better, and they will tell you what it is and how people feel about it. So they're your advocacy group, if you want.
I see. And how about the civil citizens involvement? How do you engage the citizen, in this competitiveness enhancement endeavor?
We're part of the society, and the society is either a businessman or woman, or they're a student living somewhere, or they're people who are working in NGOs. So automatically you will have to engage everybody, because in your reform agenda, it will touch everyone's life, not only the business. And that's why I said competitiveness is not only a business. If you want to bring foreign investment to your country, you will have to have a good education system. You will have to have a good healthcare system, because that investor will come and they will bring their family, and you want them to come and bring their families. If they bring their families and their kids, you want to make sure that we have good schools for their children. And you want to make sure that you also let them know that you have good healthcare system. You want to make sure that they have good entertainment system. Saudi Arabia was closed for a very long period of time. Now, who would think that Saudi Arabia has a tourist visa, and you can apply for your tourist visa in 24 hours, you will get it. And so that is something new. So the reason why we introduced that is because we want to tell the world we're open. Come and invest, come and play, come and have fun. We're having concerts all over the place right now. We have the seasons for each region. So we have 13 regions, and we have 13 seasons for each region, where we can actually do a lot of celebrations and entertainment. And that's what a normal person would like to have. They would like to have fun, play hard, and work hard. And finally, Saudi Arabia is offering that, which is something that is very new to the world. And it's new to us too. We're trying to adapt to that. But because we're a very young generation, 60% of our population is younger than 35 years of age. So the change is very easy to happen. And they're all technology savvy. So I think things are getting, we're meeting our reform agenda much faster than we can.
So I think you've been very tactful in creating alignment among the different parties in your effort towards the competitiveness improvement. I look from the ranking in the 4 areas that the IMD has put up. I think you obviously put a lot of effort in improving the government efficiencies that it shows, because your ranking came up 9 ranks from 31 to 22 in the world. Now, surprisingly, the business efficiency came up even more. It was 38 rank 4 years ago, and last year, or actually this year, came up to 19, which is a 19 level improvement. What do they do? What do the private business do? Or is it merely a fact of the government being more efficient, improving a lot of regulations and ease of doing business? Or do you help them with their productivity improvement? Other things that you can share with us?
It's actually the first, not the latter. So it's you always say, I expect that if I change those laws, the business environment actually is many levers. So you have to touch many levers, many buttons to make it happen. So you say, I'm going to change this law, and if I change this law and this law and this article and this law, and I protect them with those bylaws, this is one element of inviting the private sector to make the change. The automation actually made a huge difference. Removing, it's the word of deregulating rather than regulating. You want to de-license a lot of the business. So that encourages a lot of the entrepreneurs to get into business. So if you tell them, well, you can actually issue your CR and get your license and open your shop within 8 hours, who would not want to jump on an opportunity? It used to take months. It used to take them 8 months to open a restaurant. Right now, we made them actually do it instantly. They can actually go online. Within 2 hours, they will get their license to open a restaurant. We're not saying that it's, you deregulate and you don't consider the risk. No, we're saying deregulate when the business is less risky. However, you also have to go and do your inspections, but later. Let them go and work and experience it for 3 months, 6 months, and then you can go and do your inspections to make sure, because you always have people who are, the outliers. But not everybody is an outlier. Before we used to say, okay, everybody is guilty until they prove it otherwise. Now we're saying, no, everybody is innocent until they prove that they're doing something wrong, and that's how we actually approach it differently. So now we give your license. We'll come and check on you in 3 months and 6 months. We'll tell you to correct if you have any mistakes or problems, and then we'll kind of come and violate you. If you're still not learning the lesson, we're going to come after you. And I think that's a fair approach. And I think that with all easing those regulations and protecting the investor with good laws, providing more facility in finance, allowing everybody to do everything that they want to do, and unleashing a lot of the sectors. Before, a lot of the businesses were owned by the government, so now the government is giving away a lot of the businesses to the private sector. We've also created the Small and Medium Enterprise Authority, which actually empowered them a lot, put a lot of laws in there, did a lot of programs, did a lot of training for those entrepreneurs, and automatically, slowly, you will see more businesses growing.
Dr. Iman, I spend most of my life working from the private sector, so I do share with you on the approach that the government should be less control and deregulating more. What we used to always say is that we'll do fine if the government let us do our work on the private sector.
Yeah, the government should stay away from private. Yes. I mean, if you can't do them well, just stay away from them. Let them just do it. Unleash them. It's the word unleashing. Unleash the private sector.
Unleash the power of private sector. Yes, very good one.
Yeah.
But lately, after retirement from the private sector, I come into helping the government on few capacity, and I begin to realize that one of the duty of the government is to ensure that this is a balance. The strong player in the private sector do not take advantage of the smaller ones, and the business do not take advantage of the consumers, of the people. So there has to be some certain balance on how you look at the relationship between the private sector and the customer. Of course, to allow the development by deregulating, by ensure the ease of doing business is the key. Now, when do you step in? When do you think that it's a good time for the government to step in and start to ensure the fair competition feel and not putting the people with the lower knowledge or lesser access to the technology at risk?
Number one, I think the government should stay away totally from competing with the private sector. In a lot of countries, the governments actually are the first competitor with the private sector. They should walk away from the business, and that's where a lot of the PPP programs comes in. So you need to outsource as much as possible to the private sector. Whatever you need to do as public sector is you just set the regulations and the policies and the rules. You just set the rules. You're the regulator. The operator always have to be the private sector. That's why one of the vision's targets in Saudi Arabia is to outsource a lot of the operations in the government sector. So even when we talk about the healthcare sector, we're trying to do a lot of PPPs. We're trying to create more companies that will take over a lot of the business, and slowly these government entities will be just the regulators. You've got to work out your policies and your regulations that will, give less power to monopolies. Competition policies are very important. Saudi Arabia also established the competition authority. People are allowed to compete. If you're good, you're going to compete, and the market dynamics will actually direct you one direction to the other. If you're smart, if you have a good business model, if you know how to run your business well, if you have a good project, if you're more productive than others, the market will actually tell you, if you're good or bad. So, but make sure that you just allow good policies that will allow good competition, fair competition between companies and public sector, and the public sector should walk away, and they really should stay away from the private sector. Make sure that you have good courts. Make sure that your law is enforced. Enforcement of the law is extremely important. Then the competitors or companies will know that they will not get away with murder. There's a strong government that is going to come after them, and the rest should be led by competition between these companies.
Now, on the subject of privatization of the state enterprise, I think you're referring to whatever that the private sector can do, you should allow them to do it instead of the government taking control on that. How do you get around the resistance from the state enterprise personnel or the NGO that would try to in Thailand, what we call protect the national wealth remain in the government? How do you explain or get around that kind of?
I think it's not to get around. It's you have to work, with a set of regulations and policies. So it's not actually going around something. It's having the policy, the rule of law play right in a government. If you cannot allow corruption, you cannot allow one person making a decision. It's a strategy of a government, it's a strategy of a country, and the country should actually side by the private sector. If you have a very strong private sector, you have a very strong economy. It's in the least interest of any government to take away business from the private sector, because the whole economy is going to fall apart. There are some resources that are owned by the government, and that's how they actually inject money in the economy to the private sector so they can expand, and that is needed. For example, if you take infrastructure is huge, and the government cannot do it alone. Who's going to do that? Who are going to build the roads? Who are going to build all these hospitals and education systems and what have you? It's the private sector. The money comes from the government, and a lot of the times, because they're the source of injecting that cash into the market. The private sector will do this work, and then and the cycle of payment should be also very regulated to the private sector, so you can actually grow the private sector. And if you grow big companies, they are going to subcontract smaller companies, SMEs are going to grow, and the cycle is going to go ahead. And I think that's what we are now encouraging to do. Make sure that the public and private sector relationship is very clear. It is actually enforced by law. It's a lot of stuff is automated. You remove the hands of people out of this whole journey, and then you also have to protect the private sector to the private sector interests. So make sure that the big companies actually will provide to the smaller companies the business, and they won't take away everything, and then another monopoly is going to be created. This way you create a whole huge supply chain in most of the sectors when you grow them down.
So on privatization, you have to bring in the competition among the private sector themselves, yes, to ensure.
100%. 100%.
Yes.
I mean, one of our challenges now in Saudi Arabia in the private sector is the banking system. All our banks are Saudi banks. We have very few international banks, global banks. So what did we do and what happens? The interest rates are very high. So how can you actually kill that? Is by bringing competition. Other banks will come from outside. So how can I help as a government to bring competition in? In the NCC, what I have done in our central monetary system is to tell them, the central bank, is we told them actually from an NCC perspective, I want to encourage competitiveness. How can I do that? I will invite more banks to come in. And why would they come? If you only relax the regulations for them to come into Saudi Arabia. So we worked with the central bank to actually relax all the guidelines, remove a lot of the regulations so we can invite more global banks to come to Saudi Arabia. This way, I'm going to lower the interest rates for the other banks in Saudi Arabia, because I need more private sector to come in to have more finance, more facilities, cheaper cash, so they can grow the economy. So it's one thing that leads to the other, you know. So I think that's how you do it. Of course, private sector has to compete with private sector.
Thank you.
I think we can't really have enough time for that. We can continue on for like maybe one or two more hours, but that's all the time that we have for today. I really have to say thank you, to you, Iman, for joining us today with such a wonderful presentation and the conversation with the chairman of the Subcommittee on National Competitiveness Enhancement Committee from the Thailand side. We really look forward to having you here in Bangkok in person, sometime in the near future. Have more conversation on this very specific topic of competitiveness enhancement. But for today, I have to say, from the heart of TMA, we really appreciate your presence here, and thank you also to Kun Taewin for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Iman, it's really my great pleasure to talk to you and hear from you on this session. I think we get a lot of ideas from what you have done successfully. We've been also working on the competitiveness issue in Thailand. However, I think the continuity in implementing it is one of the key challenges in our country. With your permission, I would like to share your presentation with some of our committee members so that we can find a way to maybe replicate what you have done in certain areas. I hope you don't mind.
Thank you. Yes,
thank you very much.
I told my team actually to share it at some point today. And thank you very much. Thank you, Wanwera, and thank you, Taben. And it's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Iman.